I do not think there has been a year where I have absolutely craved the second chance bracket like I have this year. This tournament has been something else. As much madness and drama and chaos this tournament has provided, there's a couple elements that are missing from this tournament. And those two elements are buzzer beaters and overtime games. Not a single overtime game in this tournament so far. Not a single buzzer beater in this tournament so far. We have had a couple last second shots. We've had, I believe, about two or three of them, if I remember correctly, but none of them were at the buzzer. And I'm hoping that at some point throughout the rest of this tournament, we get at least one overtime game and at least one buzzer beater. We didn't get a single buzzer beater in the tournament last year. We got two in the tournament before that. But one of those buzzer beaters was just to force overtime. So in the last 2.5 tournaments, we've only had two buzzer beaters. We did get some overtime games in last year's tournament, but no overtime games yet. We have had multiple games that have had thrilling finishes, absolute chaos, but I just want to see a buzzer beater. Hopefully, we get one at some point in this tournament. But let's get to my second chance bracket. Alabama and San Diego State. San Diego State has put the Mountain West on the map. The Mountain West finally has a team back in the Sweet 16. As the Mountain West, they have had a very difficult time finding tournament success, and they take on the number one overall seed, Alabama. And as good as San Diego State's defense has been in their first two tournament games, I just feel like that Alabama is going to be too much for this Aztecs defense. So I like the Tide to move on to the Elite Eight. Creighton and Princeton. Princeton, the Cinderella story that is left in this tournament. But the top overall Cinderella story, Fairleigh Dickinson, is eliminated. But I'm going to go with the Blue Jays in this matchup. I feel like Ryan Kalkbrenner is going to be a massive mismatch in this game for Princeton. Princeton, they are a team that plays smart, but Ryan Kalkbrenner so far has been a mismatch for everybody on the floor that Creighton has faced. Houston and Miami. Now, if there was a game in this tournament or in this round of 16 that would go to overtime, I think it would be this one. And as difficult as it is going to be to predict this game, I am going to ultimately go with Houston to win this game. I do think that Miami will challenge Houston a bit, but I will go with the Cougars to advance to the Elite Eight, as the Cougars will make their third Elite Eight appearance in a row after beating Miami. Xavier and Texas. Now, I knew Xavier would be in the Sweet 16, but I didn't really know if they could go that much further. I think a lot of it was going to depend on what happened throughout the rest of the tournament so far, and they get a tough draw here against Texas in the Sweet 16. But I just think the Sioux and Carr are going to be too much for Xavier in this matchup. Although I knew Xavier was going to be in the Sweet 16 once I saw him in the NIT last year. But I just think Texas, they move on. They'll advance to the Elite Eight. Florida Atlantic and Tennessee. I was skeptical about Tennessee coming into this tournament. I thought that the injury to Ziegler was going to hurt Tennessee in the tournament, but they have overcame adversity throughout the first two rounds. They survived a scare against Louisiana, and they had a double-digit win against Duke. But I'm going to go with Tennessee in this matchup, although if Florida Atlantic wins this matchup, then they are easily a Cinderella team. But I'm going to go with Tennessee. Kansas State and Michigan State. Kansas State, they dominated against Kentucky down the stretch in the second round. While Michigan State, despite a bad performance from beyond the arc against Marquette, they got the job done in the paint. And Tom Izzo is the most experienced coach left in this tournament. And March and Tom Izzo is a dangerous combination. In Kansas State, they've had a phenomenal season, but I just think it comes to an end. I just like the experience of Tom Izzo in this matchup, the experience of Michigan State. I have the Spartans moving on to the Elite Eight. Arkansas and UConn. Eric Musselman is another one of those coaches with experience in the tournament. Arkansas has made the Elite Eight the last 2 years, but they have fallen just one game short of the Final Four. While UConn, they've been a team that nobody has really talked about. I saw some people talk about UConn, but not as many as people have in the past. And some people talk about how UConn could be a surprise team that can win the entire tournament. The last 2 tournaments they won, they completely flew under the radar. They're flying under the radar again. But I just got to go with Eric Musselman. As much as I'm not really a fan of picking teams that are coming off of big wins, coming off emotional victories, Eric Musselman is that type of coach that can get a team back into gear, back into focus. I think Arkansas once again advances to the Elite Eight. Next, we have Gonzaga and UCLA to wrap up the Sweet 16 part of this second chance bracket. And I know I said that Houston and Miami could be the game that can go into overtime, but, maybe I'm backtracking here a little bit. Gonzaga and UCLA, when they play each other in the tournament in the Final Four, that went a double overtime, and Jalen Suggs won the game on a buzzer beater. So could this possibly be the game of the tournament? Gonzaga is in I believe it's their 8th consecutive Sweet 16, while UCLA, they're in their 3rd consecutive Sweet 16. Mick Cronin has really turned the UCLA program back into blue blood caliber. If UCLA is not considered a blue blood to a lot of people, but I truthfully consider UCLA a blue blood, but I just feel like UCLA, they are the Dallas Cowboys of college basketball. A very popular team, but they haven't won a championship since the 90s. And Gonzaga, I did say from the beginning of the tournament, perhaps this is what Gonzaga needs to be a 3 seed or to be a 4 seed, because we're used to seeing them as a 1 seed and we put all this pressure on them, but there's not that much pressure on them this year. And that's because they're a 3 seed. But I just like Gonzaga to get it done. I have Gonzaga moving on to the Elite Eight, but I'm not sure which analyst said it, but they said whoever wins the match between Gonzaga and UCLA will probably win the championship. But do I buy that? Stay tuned. On to the Elite Eight. Alabama and Creighton. Now, this is going to be a big matchup if we do indeed have this Elite Eight matchup. The question is, does Creighton have the bench to get it done? A big problem for Creighton in the past is Greg McDermott just hasn't had the bench to make deep runs in this tournament. Do they have enough in the tank to make the Final Four? I don't think so. I think they're going to fall just short, but I do think they will challenge Alabama in this potential matchup. But I have the Tide moving on to the Final Four. Houston and Texas. I just feel like Houston is becoming the new Gonzaga, or Houston is the Gonzaga of this year. A team that is a 1 seed, a team that's a contender to win it all. But there's a point that they run into a team that's really good that they haven't faced throughout a big portion of the year. As Houston, they do have a pretty good resume for non-conference, but just like Gonzaga in years past, this Texas team, I think, is a team of destiny. I thought that Texas was an upset candidate in round one. I knew a 15 would upset a 2 in the first round again this year, but I just picked the wrong one. But I think Texas moves on to the Final Four. And so far, 2 of the Final Four teams, they're perhaps the 2 teams that have without a doubt faced the most adversity this season. With Alabama, what's going on within their program, and Texas losing Chris Beard mid-season, Tennessee and Michigan State, I am having a tough time with this one, but I am going to go with, the Big Ten has not made the Final Four in a couple years now, but the last Big Ten team to make the Final Four was Michigan State. So I will pick Tom Izzo and the Spartans to advance to the Final Four. And I'll tell you what, if there was 2 things, well, 3 things I wish I can go back on my bracket, it's picking Michigan State to go further. I also wish to pick Arkansas to go further. And I also wish I would have not picked Texas to lose to Colgate, as Colgate, once again, overhyped for no reason. Arkansas and Gonzaga to wrap up the Elite Eight. And Arkansas, they ended Gonzaga's season last year. And I think that is on Gonzaga's mind. Well, without a doubt it is. But I think that Gonzaga, they pull through and they advance to the Final Four. Now, on to the Final Four, Alabama and Michigan State. It's been an unbelievable run for Michigan State and Tom Izzo. But I just think that Alabama, they will roll in this matchup, roll to the championship. And Texas and Gonzaga, I am going to pick Texas to win this matchup, advance to the championship. And the final, Alabama and Texas, I am sticking with my pick of picking Alabama to win the national championship, win the entire tournament. And as far as how many total points are scored in the championship game, I'm going to go with 143. So that will do it for my second chance bracket. Like, share, comment, and subscribe. And until next time, have a wonderful day.